Well, here we are again at the Jerry Reynolds Show at the beautiful McCreary Studios, home of the finest furniture in Sacramento. But then you guys know that. I tell you that all the time. But you're starting to learn, aren't you? Okay. Well, anyway, we've got a special guest, a couple of special guests here today, but we'll get to that as we go. But the first one, of course, Deuce Mason, basically Dave Deuce Mason, who has worn many, many hats, which we'll get into. But anyway, I want to just thank you for coming on board. We're going to talk a little bit of sports, your background in particular.
I'm excited to be here, Jerry. And not to get all emotional as we start, but I'm telling you, and I think it's because everything that's happened the last couple of weeks or whatever with Kobe's passing. But I should tell you, it has meant a lot to me to have a relationship with you over the years, and the fact that you would call or I call you and we just talk basketball for 30 minutes or so, sometimes longer, and we just talk hoops, and that means something to me. And for someone who grew up in Sacramento and watched you on TV, and you and Grant and G-Man and being a Kings fan and kind of shaping me to this career path, it just means a lot to have that with you.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. I suppose probably as much as we've talked basketball, which we have talked a lot, is that you've come to realize I'm really not that smart about it.
I don't know about that.
Kind of one of those disappointments,
No.
But no, I'd have to say, that's one of those things that I probably was going to get into a little bit, is that, we every now and then, just certain things come up during a season, or get your thoughts on, or even the college games, or what's going on, and I know you always have a good thought about it.
I mean, that.
Yeah, really, and I mean it's always opinions, there's I learned a long time ago that anybody that thinks they're a genius in basketball has really got some serious problems.
Yeah, I'd say even the good ones make mistakes. We've seen that a lot over the years.
Well, they in all cases.
Yep.
I mean, I always say that one of the greatest coaches that I've ever known is Pat Riley. And I also know when he didn't have very many good players, they won 17 games. And so
it's almost like you need good players to win, right, Jerry?
I always said, Pat didn't get dumber.
Yeah.
He did not. And then within a couple of years, he won a world championship. So, there is that. But I think, judging talent, whether it's any team, you look at some of the mistakes. Now, the Kings have made more than most, that's for sure.
Sure.
In recent history. So, but anyway, the thing that interests me a lot about yourself is, I think with just about anybody in the sports-related field, is going back into, say, when you're in grade school or whatever, how interested were you in not playing sports and following sports, or when did that sort of happen for you?
And I was really young. I mean, I remember my mom grew up a Cowboys fan, football, and that was mid-'90s when the Cowboys were amazing. That's when I was like 5 years old in the mid-'90s, 93. And my first memory of sports is just watching those Cowboys teams, falling in love with Aikman and Irvin and Emmitt Smith. And I would go to Super Bowl parties. I'd be the kid that could name all the offensive linemen. Everyone's amazed. And I just loved it. And then basketball, my first memory of basketball, I was, again, 5, and I saw Shaq dunk a basketball. And for me, I fell in love with Shaq. He was in Orlando at the time, and I'd never seen a guy that big dunk the ball like that. I was in awe. And so my first real team growing up when I was super young was the Orlando Magic. Shaq made me fall in love with the game. I had Shaq everything. I had Shaq, shirts, posters, books. And then he went to the Lakers, and I was done with him at that point.
It's interesting, too, on Shaq. One of my memories, and I have a lot, because at that time we were in position, I had the 7th pick in that particular draft that Shaq was going to be available, and we were like everybody else hoping to get number 1. I carried around a Shaq jersey to New Jersey, in case.
Like a Kings one?
Yeah, yeah. Because
Where is that thing?
I gave it to Jim Thomas, the owner, after several years later. You know, he didn't even think about it. I wish I had forgot about. I wish I'd have kept it.
Yeah.
But it was, you know, he entitled to it. But anyway, of course, we didn't get the first pick, which would have been Shaq. But it's always interesting to me a couple of things that I noticed because I scouted him quite a bit in college at LSU. And different places. And there's two things that struck me at that time. That guy could run like the wind. People tend to think of him in terms of his Laker days, even
when he was heavy,
when he was getting really big. But when he came out of college, I mean, he could run as well as any guard in the league, and I mean, really, as well as he was as fast as De'Aaron Fox, for that matter.
Athletic,
just pure speed, amazing,
powerful, and what I loved, I mean, the hoops were different then, but I remember multiple times him breaking the hoops. Like they were coming down, broke glass on a hoop. Like it was wild.
Oh, he was just obviously one of the all-time greats. Then the other thing that struck me, because I'd go around and in those places, I always like to do that and talk to people. They knew Shaq, not necessarily coaches and stuff, so you get a real feel. And a lot of times you really see a lot of things about certain guys that, you know, that aren't so lovely. That what a wonderful guy. No, he's a real jerk, you know, and treats everybody like. But in Shaq's case, you couldn't find him. I didn't really think the world of the guy. You know, people say just absolutely a delight, and you see that now in his personality and his commercials and things. And I always remember going forward, and I'll get off this, but talking to a good friend of mine, Frank Hamlin, who I worked with at coaching, and he'd always say, you know, said everybody. He's the most popular teammate he's ever seen. You know, just absolutely everybody liked him. You know?
And what he did for the game. I mean, look, he created a fan in me. Like when I was a young kid, that was an impression.
We won't hold that against him, but so anyway, so that kind of got you going, and now. As far as an athlete, what sports did you play? What were you good at?
I would say this: it wasn't much of an athletic career for Deuce Mason, but I, in elementary school, 3rd grade, started playing basketball. That was one. I played flag football. I remember going out for tackle football around the same time,
and learned the difference
and
there.
I was like, no, I'm not about this. I don't like it, and. You know, I didn't. My dad wasn't in my life. My dad was in and out of prison my whole life. Like he'd go in for 2 years, out, in and out, in and out, and so, you know, I had good people in my life. My grandparents are awesome. My mom did the best she could under the circumstances, but I don't think I ever had anyone that really pushed me to keep going, keep going. So a lot of it was up to me to kind of figure out. And so I played basketball, and then I got to middle school. I played basketball. And at that point in time, 8th grade going to freshman year, my dad was out of prison for a good 2 years. And it got to a point where I was going to go move in with him. And I tried out for the freshman basketball team, and it didn't go well. And this was like around the same time he ended up going back to prison. Right. So I get cut from freshman basketball, which in my mind, like, how did this even happen? So I get cut. He ends up going back to prison. I never tried out again. And it's one of those things I regret. And I've talked to a lot of people about like the regret I have not trying to it. But what it did do is like it pushed me to try other things. And I was like, I want to be in sports broadcasting, in journalism, in writing. So I started writing. I was in an English class my sophomore year, and we'd have free writes. We'd write whatever we want. And I used to always write recaps of the Kings games.
Is that right?
And my teacher at the time, she said, you should really sign up for like newspaper. You're really into this. So then I went and signed up for newspaper in high school at Del Campo, become the sports editor-in-chief, and that's kind of where it went. Yeah, I feel
really like the awakening, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, I think I knew I kind of wanted to go the sports route even when I was like playing in, even in elementary school. I was just obsessed with broadcasting. I love watching the news. I was like, should I be a weather person? Should I used to record myself calling games in my bedroom.
Grant
games.
Napier.
Napier
alert.
I would literally turn down the TV and just call games. I'd do the same thing with talk shows. I'd record myself doing mock talk shows.
I'll bet you one thing you didn't do, like Grant did. You didn't go out and at recess in the fourth grade and do play-by-play.
No, I was not doing play-by-play at recess.
As much as much as I've known Grant, when it's like, and somehow it didn't surprise me.
It doesn't surprise me at all when you say that. Like for some people, it'd be like, really, that's interesting with Grant. No, it doesn't surprise me at all.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just knew I wanted to go this route, and the Kings were a big part of the reason, right? Like they played a brand of basketball that you just wanted to watch in the early 2000s, and it just made me love the sport even more. You really felt deeply in love with it.
It'd make me love the sport more now, right, too, if we'd ever see it again.
I would love to see it again.
Before I get into total senility.
Right.
But it may not happen. I don't know.
So, yeah, I mean, I fell in love with it, and that's why I went the path I did.
I noticed too that at Sacramento State you wrote for the Hornet. You were a sports writer, sports editor, and so did you enjoy that? Part?
I did. I would say this. The college experience was weird for me because my journey when I was working at Sports 1140. I got an internship when I was 16. It was one of those unofficial internships. They just let me come in and screen calls. And by the time I graduated from high school, I had a part-time board op job there, like working behind the scenes. So I was going to college at the same time working at KHGK, and to me that was my life. Like school was cool, and I was doing what I needed to do to get through college.
Yeah.
Like I just wanted to get through it. So I enjoyed the Hornet and writing for the State Hornet, but I wasn't as invested into it as much as I was invested into KHGK, because I was like, this is the
what you
path.
want to
This
do,
is what I'm doing. So I enjoyed it, but I was very much like I would work on the Rise Guys morning show behind the scenes, get off there, go to school.
Yeah, that's a terrific show, I thought.
Oh yeah, I love those guys.
I mean, with Whitey and of course the Phantom and of course Kreidler later on. I mean, I thought that's just a terrific show. And just very knowledgeable guys that had fun doing it.
Oh yeah, and I mean, I learned a lot from those guys, and just you just watch pros work sometimes, and you go, man, like they just get it. And what always struck me about all those guys on the Rise Guys is not only were they good at what they did, they were good people.
Oh yeah, good. I mean, you couldn't help but enjoy being around those guys. I was around them a good bit, different shows, and I mean, I just enjoyed the heck out of it. I just was always excited to go on with them, because we'd have a little fun and try to talk some sensible things, but not get, it's not life and death.
No,
it's sports.
It's sports, right? At the end of the day, it's sports, and I felt like they had a great balance of that. And there's so many times in this business too where people are just so full of themselves. They may be the most talented people on the planet, but they're just not nice people.
Yeah, and you find that in all professions.
Man, it just rubs me.
But I got to interrupt you.
Okay.
On this, I noticed. Now, this is something that I have to apologize for ahead of time. Is I noticed that you graduated cum laude with a 3.6 average. I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't have predicted that.
Graduate with honors. Well, working at KHGK behind the scenes.
Yeah,
I mean, it's pretty impressive, Jerry.
Well, it is, and I mean, obviously, it actually is, considering everything, and obviously the issues with your father, and I mean, it had to be some issues there. I mean, that's really terrific.
I appreciate that.
I mean, I know I was probably a little bit like you in the sense that I didn't really, school kind of came easy for me, but I didn't do nearly as well as you did because I was just a lazy dog. It's like I would do exactly what I had to do.
Just to get by.
Just to get by.
Yeah.
And then, I always have a little bonus there, just so in case something really went bad, I'd have a little something fall back on. But, it just never was the deal.
It wasn't your thing.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say graduate school, by that time, I was kind of a little more mature, and I did pretty well then. But when you're married and going, that'll motivate you a little bit.
They'll fire you up
with a kid and all that. And I got all fired up. But I thought that was kind of interesting. Now then looking through your career too, I mean, obviously you've done just about everything. Obviously, with 1140, I always remember you and Morgan on the noon show with Jason Ross, which I thought was terrific. I mean, it was kind of like the Rise Guys in my mind. And of course, I've always said Jay Ross is, if there's such a thing as the perfect host. I always said he could. I think he could do anything. I think he
Yes.
could fit in with any group. But you guys were really such a nice fit, and I guess that's why they decided to break it up. You didn't want something that actually worked. that
Yeah,
people
I
liked.
mean, reflecting back, and that was honestly a big motivating factor. You know, I'm big on motivation. I use things to fire me up a little bit. You know, whether it's the stuff with my dad or, you know, when KHGK decided to go in a new direction, like we had a great thing going in the 3 with me, Morgan, and Jason.
Oh, I
it was
thought so.
great.
It was great.
And I mean, I will stand by that. It was the most fun I've had doing radio, and I've had a lot of fun doing radio. And it's nothing against anyone else I worked with. It was fun. It worked. It wasn't too serious. It wasn't too goofy. It was a good balance, and I felt like people connected with it. And that's why to this day, we stopped doing that show in 2015. People still reference things that happened on that show or topics or fun moments to this day. And so it stuck with people. And, you know, obviously they weren't totally thrilled at the time with how the things were going in the morning. So they thought, you know, bring me and Morgan to the morning could kind of boost things up. And to be frank, it just didn't work. It didn't work, you know, and sometimes those things don't work. And
I don't see how any, you know, I mean, you know, Carmichael Dave really is terrific, but I mean, just a morning show by nature got to be tough, I think, just to get up and and get, you know, I don't know.
I mean, that's definitely a grind. You know, it just didn't click. You know, sometimes it's like in basketball. Like
Sure.
sometimes you put these talented pieces together and you think, oh, this will work, and then you get on the court and you go,
No, chemistry
it's
is
not
something
working.
you can't always
right.
predict.
And on the midday show, the chemistry was real. There was nothing fake about it. And look, I'm not saying you have to like everyone you work with. It wasn't there. And they decided to, at the time, let us go. It was like April Fool's Day, 2016. Yeah, and you know, that one was, you know, people didn't believe it when we announced it on Twitter. They thought we were joking, and it wasn't a joke. But that date now, 4/1/16, I'm like, yeah,
Wow.
I think about that now because it's motivated me. Like, okay, you by deciding to go a different direction told me it without saying it that I wasn't good enough. And so I just went, okay, let's go. So within the matter after that ended, it was like, okay, huddle with Morgan. We got to do a podcast. Then Good Day Sacramento calls us and it's like, hey, you want to do TV? I'm like, yeah, of course I do. Let's go. And so it was more like I didn't let it like bring me down. I was confident enough in my abilities, and I was like, all right, let's go. Let's
Sure.
figure this out. And it's worked out.
It reminds me a lot of had Gary Gerald on some time ago, and of course the G-Man, all
I
time
love
great.
him.
But you know, that's one of the things I think he really used. You know, he was on a long time with Channel 3, and you know, it's one of those deals. They decided, well, we got to have a younger guy, go a different direction, whatever. They always say we need to go a different direction. Sometimes the direction's right into the wall. You know, I mean, it's like
That's true.
You know, I mean, really? But anyway, so they let G-Man go. But I mean, it was much like yourself. It's like, okay, we're going to we want to, you know, had other opportunities, but we want to stay in Sacramento.
Yeah.
You just found a way to make it work, you know, and it's obviously worked out great.
It has, and I'm not naive to think that like I may have to move at some point in my life to a different market if I want to continue to grow and stuff like that. But ultimately, if I had my choice, I'd love to be in Sacramento and stay here. I'm born and raised here. I left once to go to San Francisco with the Rise guys for a year, and then I came back, and I love this city. You know, I have so much passion. I think the fan base is so unique. The passion.
Great,
I mean,
great
people
climate, great climate. I mean,
yes.
it's. I always said to me, I mean, being a Midwesterner, it's like the Midwest more than it is the East and West Coast. It's more like the Midwest with great climate,
Right.
and because of the people. You know, you actually have people who actually work for a
You
living.
feel like a connection to with them,
Yeah.
and that's a big deal to me. So ultimately, you know, obviously my goal now is like I definitely want to do play-by-play at the next level, at the NBA level, and big long term, I'd love to be on TNT doing play-by-play. That would be like the ultimate dream job. So yeah, I would probably move to any other NBA city if
Well, yeah,
you know,
you know, no reason to apologize for that. I always say it's just like players. I always tell players, I mean, over the years, it's like you got to keep in mind you're an individual contractor.
yeah.
And I mean, it's not that you know that you know you can have a certain amount of loyalty, but there is a point where you've got to be loyal to yourself
Sure.
first. And I think sometimes you know, you don't want to hurt your own career by saying, well, I want to be loyal to this radio station or whatever, when if it's to their advantage.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you bring up with sports, like
Sure.
Blake Griffin a couple years ago signs
Yeah.
this big time deal with the Clippers. He's a Clipper for life. They trade him 3 months later.
Yeah.
It happens, you know.
You're a Clipper for life, and we've decided to kill you.
Yeah, exactly.
I used to bring you the story. Late great Cotton Fitzsimmons is a good friend of mine and a mentor over the years in different places. But he was telling me he'd pretty much, you know, kind of retired it with the Phoenix Suns. And he said, you know, they're paying me $400,000 a year for life, you know, and I just basically meet fans and
Wow.
play golf. And I said, well, you know, that's a great gig. I said, Cotton, thing I'd worry about is at some point you might realize it'd be cheaper just to have you killed. Hire a hitman. So if I was you, I'd be
400,000.
Yeah, I was gonna say they you know, it's like what there is a point where it's like,
Yeah.
why did we do this? 400,000 a year.
Can we just get him off? Let's...
So anyway, but I don't know what we're talking about there. But I was gonna say, yeah, I really got a kick out of watching 31 with you and Morgan during the G League game. I thought, yeah, you know, you're going to have 4 or 5, I think, games on 31, right? And for the Stockton Kings G League, for those of you not fully aware, it's, you know, the minor league, and it really is I won't say second best league in basketball because of Europe, but it's certainly better. There's more talent in the G League than there is in the ACC or the Big Ten and all that stuff, which most people don't really understand.
No, that's true. And the G League's, it's growing. It's getting better. I think teams are using it better. I think it's a true developmental system now, where when it first launched, you know, there was like 8 teams and people kind of scoffed at it. But these, you know, there's 28 G League teams going at the goal is to get to 30.
To get to all 30 involved. And I mean, you know, to treat it more like it should be treated, to where, you know, it is a true minor league, a AAA kind of situation, or even maybe a little better. But I think the key is, of course, pay guys better, because there's probably 30% of players that probably should be in that league are either in Europe or China,
Australia
because of money. And so I'd be you know, I think the league, you know, at some point need to.
That's the next step for sure.
The next step, you know, and they've made steps. I will say that, with the 2-way contracts and all that. I don't know. I've always thought that the league needs to get back to drafting at least a 3rd round and maybe even a 4th round, because that would give you players.
Yeah, and once they allow guys to come out of high school again, I think the league will go that route. Then maybe you'll see something like that, because then you can draft this, you know, 18-year-old and go, yeah, we're going to use him a lot in the G League.
In the G League, where he, you know, where he can play, and I think that we're starting to see that a little more too. But years ago, even when they had a minor league, as they do now, but a lottery pick, for instance, just would not be sent to the G League.
Right.
And so, well, we drafted in lottery, so we got to play him, and it's like he's not ready to play.
Right.
And,
but it's a public perception thing.
Yeah.
It's amazing. There's too many teams who think that way. It's like, you got to stop worrying about public perception and think about what's right.
Quit worrying about winning a press conference or,
you
know, that sort of thing. I always say that was one of the things I thought was a real mistake the franchise made with Ben McLemore. I think, you know, Ben's now starting to kind of carve out a niche for himself, finally. But he was a guy who really could have benefited by a G League experience, playing a lot of minutes. He played a lot of minutes in the NBA, but
he wasn't ready yet.
He wasn't ready, and it just doesn't serve itself very well. I always say, kind of like the idea of in NFL, you know, they bring in these young quarterbacks, and most of them get torn up and destroyed because of in the first year or two, rather than in years past. It automatically would be backups for a couple of years,
like Aaron Rodgers with Brett Favre.
Aaron Rodgers, absolutely, and even Patrick Mahomes, you know, was spent a year behind Alex Smith, and he said how much that really helped him. I'm sure it did. So anyway,
no, I'm with you on that, and the winning the press conference thing is so overrated. And so many franchises think that way. It's like you want to win on the court or the field. That's what fans are going to love. And that's what you got to do.
And you cannot make everybody happy.
No,
you know, I mean, I always thought Jeff Petrie made a great statement years ago. Said, you know, if you want to lead the band, you have to turn your back to the audience. Wow. I mean, that's just the reality of it.
Yeah.
You know, at some point, everybody's got an opinion about this or that, or this guy ought to play. I always used to tell fans, they said, well, this guy ought to play more. I said, well, exactly who needs to play less? You
Can't
can't
play
have
everybody.
both ways.
Yeah.
Now, if you want this guy in the game, then tell me who you want to take. Well, man, I don't want that. Well, you're not serving any purpose then,
Right.
and that's the thing. I always thought about people thinking about coaching. Well, I don't understand why they don't block out, or why don't don't the coach tell them to block out? I said, yeah, maybe they do tell them, and maybe they just don't.
They don't
or
execute.
The truth is, who do they block out? In today's game, it's all spread out. There's no block out.
Oh, no. You're going back.
You just react to the ball and go get it. That's it. But anyway, I'll go on a tangent.
Yeah,
there.
no, and you're talking about the G League, and once I knew that when they said, hey, the team's going to relocate from Reno to Stockton, I talked to some people with the Kings, and I said, look, I want to try play-by-play. I don't know what the plans are, but I'd love to be considered. And, a couple months went by, I didn't really hear anything, so I just wanted to put it out there because I want the opportunity. And a couple months go by, they talked to some people, and they said, hey, do you want to do this? I'm like, are you kidding me? Yes, absolutely. And I'm so glad I did because I love it. And it's something I probably should have done earlier on, whether it was like high school or some college push for that. But I was, worried about doing talk shows and other things. I was just doing so many
had
other
other
things.
commitments,
Yeah,
sure.
yeah. So now that I have this opportunity, it's amazing. I love it. But I don't want to just do one thing either. I want to be able to do play-by-play. I want to do talk shows. I want to do some TV. I just want to be versatile enough to
Well, I think
do
you
it
have
all.
to be.
It's
I
fun.
mean, I always say that's, kind of like my take on all but the superstars in basketball. I mean, a player needs to find a way to be productive. Now, if that means being a two guard or a small forward or an off the bench player, it doesn't really. It's up to you to find a way to be productive.
Yeah, be a star in your role.
And I always used to tell guys, they'd be bitching about minutes or something. I say, if you want to, the key for you, partner, is find a way to be in the league 10 years, whatever it takes, and you'll be rich. And that's what I'd concentrate on. Now, if you want to worry about getting 15 minutes as opposed to 12 minutes, if that's going to make you unhappy, it's probably going to get short for you.
Yeah. And then you're only going to get like 4 years instead of that 10.
Yeah,
That's a big difference.
Well, that's the thing, too. It's like for every player in the NBA, and you guys doing the G League, there's a couple of equally talented guys in the G League that aren't there. That could be for maybe different reasons. Some justifiable, some opportunities, just not quite getting it mentally, how to do it. And, but some guys just will never figure it out.
Yeah, that's the difference, right, between the G League and NBA. These guys the G League's super talented. I mean, I remember last year, we watched, it was Santa Cruz, Stockton in a scrimmage. And I saw this combo guard out there, and he was destroying. I'm like, who is that? It was Kendrick Nunn. I'm like, how is this guy not in the NBA?
But now
A year later,
sure.
he's starting in Miami on a good team, on a really good team.
That's another thing, too. There's another example of obviously a franchise that always seems to do it right.
Yeah.
You see the Utahs and Indianas and the San Antonios and Miamis are always find somebody. It's like I don't want to get into any particular game, but I mean, besides Nunn, Tyler Hero, a late pick.
Duncan Robinson.
Duncan Robinson.
He was in the G League last year. I called all his games.
Yeah, and they're one of the elite teams.
Yeah. Gabe Vincent, who was just playing for Stockton, gets a two-way deal with Miami. Yeah, Miami does things the right way. And it's, Riley sets the tone.
Oh, he does.
And he said it with LeBron, too. LeBron, as great as he is, he does take over franchises with Cleveland, with the Lakers. He wasn't able to do the same in Miami.
No.
And because Pat Riley set the tone. You have a basketball guy.
We have our team playing, and you get to fly on it.
Yes.
Not everybody else that doesn't play for contract employees type thing. And so, I would say there's a few that certainly are ahead of the curve, and it kind of shows up in that sort of thing. But kind of like we just touched on it, I think going forth. Obviously a lot of ways you can go with your career, and I think with the experience you're getting with the Stockton Kings, is that kind of an area where you feel like that might be your?
Yeah, I think so. I used to, when I was younger, just because of how I
Younger. First of all, how old are you?
I'm 31. But when I'm
geez.
talking about young, when I'm talking about young is when I was a little kid. When I was a little kid, I used to stress about everything. Like my grandma would tell me, like I used to stress about money as a kid, which I'm like, really? As a 5 years old, I was stressing about money, and that was just because of this financial, situation we were in as a family.
Well, I stress about money, but that's okay.
But
Mrs. Reynolds doesn't, but I do.
Yeah, a 5-year-old shouldn't be worried about that. So I used to always get stressed about the future. What's going to happen? And now I feel like I'm finally to the point where I'm confident in myself that it's going to work out. Like I would not have predicted this path for where I was going. Like I thought, okay, I do a talk show and that's kind of it. I didn't think I was going to be working on Good Day. I didn't think I was going to, so I'm a big believer that if you work hard, you treat people well, it's going to work out. So I'm not going to stress about like what's next. I think it's going to, as long as I keep working hard and I don't, take plays off, so to speak, and work hard, like it's going to work out for me. And I don't know when that's going to be. I'm not going to stress about that. I'm happy doing what I'm doing right now. And I hope there's a lot more in the future.
Well, that's a good philosophy. I mean, because I think a lot of young people, they'll basically get ahead of themselves. They'll say, well, I'm qualified to do this job. Okay. It doesn't make any difference. I mean, prepare yourself to do the job, and when the opportunity comes, then you're prepared.
Sure.
It doesn't mean it's just going to happen just that day. Oh, I'm prepared. Okay, well, sure. There'll be 5 people want to hire you for that thing you think you're
right
qualified for. I mean, it just doesn't work that way. There's a ton of people, a lot of people may be equally qualified.
Absolutely.
And so, just don't spend time worrying about what you can't control. But like you say, what you can control is preparing yourself.
And it used to bug me when I saw other people get jobs around the country. Like, I'm just as good. And I went, no, like they're working hard. They built relations. They're doing the same thing. Just don't worry, like you said. Just work. You can control your own destiny. Just work on yourself, and you'll get there.
Yeah, and it certainly could be true. I mean, that yes, you probably could have more talent than that particular person, but
what are you doing as a person to get there?
Get there. So I do think, I always get people, and I'm sure you get people come up and say, well, I want to be a sports analyst like you. What did you do to get there? I said, I don't know, 50 years of coaching in college and
doing every type of job
and reading everything I could read. And I said, certainly TV wasn't what I was preparing for, but I said, what I do is not like a play-by-play person. I said, if you want to do what Grant does, you better go to college and study it and prepare for it and put in years and years and years. But now, for what I do is, you better be a former player and have some background as a player and knowledge and or coaching and something of that nature. I said, that's just the way it is.
Well, I think about your path because I remember a couple of years ago I did that long-form podcast on kind of your journey.
Yeah.
Which was so fun to learn about your journey and talk to other people about you. But, I mean, you came to Sacramento. I don't think you envisioned when you came to Sacramento in 1985 that you would be here in 2020.
Oh, of course not. No, I can tell you, I thought, my wife talked, I said, well, if things go well, we maybe can get 2 or 3 years out of it, and maybe I can get a Division I college coaching job and then get back to kind of the path that I thought I should have been on. I mean, I thought I should have been a Division I coach sooner anyway, and never got the opportunities. I always remember one from national championships, and I'd go in a couple interviews, and they'd say, well, you don't have any experience at the Division I level. And I said, no, that's kind of what I'm trying to get.
That's right.
I mean, but that's kind of what I thought. I mean, I certainly didn't anticipate having the opportunity to be a head coach or all the other things, and certainly TV, that wasn't.
Right, and so you coach, assistant, GM, the Monarchs, TV. I mean, you would not have predicted any of that, but like you put yourself in a position because you know the game. You're a good I mean, no one has a bad thing to say about you. That's the other thing. That's a big deal. And so it's just cool that you came here in 1985 thinking, I'm going to be here a couple of years and see what happens. And now this is where you live. This is your life.
I think it's similar to in a lot of ways to what you've went through, though. I mean, I think a person really has to be willing to kind of sometimes step back from what you want to do. Okay, they don't want me in this role, I'll take this role. And try to, whatever it is, try to make it the best I can make it. type thing. You know, I always say it kind of goes back to, I've said before, my dad kind of explained a couple things to me when I was working on a golf course. My job was raking sand traps and mowing bunkers, and I came home bitching, you know, like those days, just like 80 cents an hour was minimum wage.
Wow.
But I mean, of course, that
1912 was that?
just about. And I was bitching about it. And Dad said, well, he said, boy, they're paying you $6 a day. What you do is give them $7 a day worth, and it'll all work out.
That's
And of course, I thought, what's he know?
But that's a great
but it's
point,
exactly right. You know, I mean, I think that's what any employee should do, is try to figure out a way to give them more than they're paying you, and then they'll find a way to keep you around.
That's a good point. That's a good lesson right there.
So anyway, of course, that's probably why Dad never made much money. I don't know.
He was just satisfied making what he was making. That's hilarious.
So there's a little bit of that, but no, and I think too, I want to get into, you know, your relationship, you and Morgan Reagan. You know, you guys are a great team and have been a team for a number of years, just about everything. So when did that all start?
So I was working at KHGK. I met her at a Kings game. She was an intern at News 10 at the time with, you know, Sean Cunningham, Brian May, Ryan Yamamoto, those guys, good guys.
Great guys.
And so we were talking, and, you know, she's got a little fiery personality. You know, she's not.
Really?
The breaking news. Like, she's got a little, she'll go at you a little bit. And I was like, hey, have you ever thought about sports? You should like internet sports radio. She was clearly interested in that kind of field. So she started interning at KHGK as well. And, you know, she just clicked right away, and it was like, okay, cool. And me and Jason were like, we should put her on air sometimes. Let's see, you know.
Yeah.
And eventually, she just became part of the show. And eventually, you know, KHGK's like, we got to hire her, and you know, she worked hard to get there. You know, because her journey is different too. And I know you're going to talk to her about it, but you know, she wasn't watching sports like I was growing up. She was playing sports.
Yeah.
You know, that was her thing. She was playing ball. Yeah, she was. You know, so. She comes at it from a different perspective, and and being a woman in the industry, trying to be in a male dominated,
extra tough. Yeah,
it's tough. But she comes in, and like, you know, people respect her, and so she's been able to click right away. And you know, obviously, we all got close working on with Jason Ross, and then once we went to the morning, stay close. And after that ended, it was almost natural. It was, you know, we got to do a podcast then. We got to keep this going because we have chemistry. And, you know, that was tough for her on the morning show too, because she had a pretty prominent role with the middays, and leadership at the time there, it's no longer there. They thought, just let Deuce and Dave talk, and kind of reduced her role. Like almost like, hey, and you see it sometimes on sports shows where it's like, hey, the woman on the show just asks questions. And that's what she turned into. And I'm just like, oh, this is so bad.
Yeah,
you know, and that's deflating for her, but also like, I know what she has.
Yeah, because
I've heard it, you know?
Yeah.
And so once that ended, it was so cool that, you know what, Morgan, we're doing a podcast together as I knock over my coffee, a podcast together, and you're going to talk. Like this is an equal partnership here. And it's been fun to just see her grow and turn into a really talented, broadcaster.
Well, no question about it. And kind of on that note, I think we'll move to the next little situation we've got planned, and certainly we want to plan for the audience. We will have Morgan Reagan not only on, but we'll also have Morgan and Deuce for
that's trouble.
So that will, no question, will be nothing but trouble, and there'll be some exposés coming. So thank you, Deuce,
thanks for having me.
Really, I've enjoyed it, and hopefully fans have got a little different look at Dave Deuce Mason.
Appreciate it, Jerry.